I usually prefer to do coverage of survival horror trailers at polar ends of the calendar year for the big game shows, the cleverly titled The Game Show in December and E3 in the summer. Well, you'll notice not only was there no such episode from my channel in June due to E3's cancellation this year, but multiple satellite expos cropped up in its place. I swear, every time I sat down to script this episode, there was another Game Fest Showcase State of the Next Fest Com thingy. Having said that, I'm just gonna say this. Survival horror is carrying gaming right now. With console exclusives going the way of Channing Tatum's acting career, AAA games no longer a guarantee to serve as system sellers, let alone franchise starters. Past remakes prioritized at the expense of new IPs to justify the expense of these water heaters, and the Bigfoot sighting that is unavailable PS5. It's announcements like S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 and the RE4 Remake that gets the industry buzzing, the fanbase talking, and live streamers trending. It's a packed house of summer 2022 horror game announcements, so let's say we allowed this video's sponsors to get a word in edgewise. Think of the power to tune out the whole world placed in your hands. Now think again, because Jabra headsets puts that power in your ears. Listen closely. From workout earbuds to Bluetooth music headsets and office hearing devices. So, if other brands play your music sounding like a broken record, march to the beat of a different tune with Jabra. If you're an HD snob like me, you probably buy Samsung for all your major electronics. Catch up on your favorite horror classics on one of their Ultra HD TVs. Watch one of Scream Factory's Blu-rays on their 4K players. Keep up with updates from 80s horror documentary In Search of Darkness on a high-end tablet. Subscribe to your favorite YouTuber through one of their Galaxy phones. I have so many Samsung devices, I've always thought they should be paying me. Well, now they can, and you can help. If you use the link in the description for either Samsung or Jabra purchases, it'll help the channel out tremendously. With the promotional considerations accounted for, it's on with the show. Alright, we've got 4 events to tackle, 1 nested game show, and dozens of releases to get to, so I'm gonna list these bad boys off rapid fire, so try and keep up. There'll be a test later. We open our rundown of survival horror titles with Summer Game Fest and This Game Reveal. Aliens Dark Descent will be a squad-based isometric game. If this is your cup of overpriced coffee, that's really on you, but as I mentioned in episode 45, I don't see this announcement as anything worth celebrating. We've now gotten 2 game titles in just as many years with the Aliens gaming license that spotlight action, none that strictly adhere to horror, and 8 years on, no Alien Isolation sequel to appease fan demand. Is this being made by Capcom? This, after last year's Fireteam Elite, if you're gonna ditch the aforementioned sequel in favor of the FPS route, please make an AVP game. Humana Space Prison, yakety smackety viral experiments, herky jerky secrets beneath the surface. Oh great, a gravity gun. There's turning the industry on its head. Hey now, let's take a ride on the space rapids. You don't see that every day now, do you? This blender turbine that was handpicked to show off to the fans, didn't they already have this in Dead Space 3? The game that killed the franchise? I ain't gonna cap. The more I see of this game, the less excited I am for it. I have yet to see anything that differentiates it from Dead Space, warrants purchase aside from strictly live streaming content on my channel, or establishes the capability or legitimacy of next-gen consoles. It's astonishing the number of games that still seek influence from RE and Silent Hill, and yet they're able to stand out from their inspirations. I'm not impressed. If that isn't bad enough, if the hype cycle isn't already in full swing, you've got this fluff piece courtesy of reliable media minion IGN. Reinventing survival horror? Anyone insincerely drumming up artificial anticipation that the Callisto effect is poised to innovate the survival horror genre should get a CT scan to confirm the dead space between their ears. Apparently, embellishment is as bad with scary games as it is with horror movies. A history lesson, kiddies. The last media-fueled hype train that was allowed to go off the rails was called The Evil Within, when shill news outlets, IGN very much included, were blowing smoke over how that game spelled the return to form for survival horror icon Shinji Mikami. How'd that one turn out? Oh, that's right, that game didn't reinvent a damn thing, took no responsibility by putting the cart before the horse, and that game came out just one console life cycle ago, and clearly they haven't learned their lesson. The moral of the story? Let this game stand on its own merits and cool it with the advertisement. Okay, Witchfire. Now we're talking. For me, this dark fantasy title was the game of the show for Summer Game Fest. I liked the idea of guns with my medieval swordplay, and the inclusion of magic to your arsenal only sweetens the pot. When the church grows desperate in their war against witches, they make a pact with practitioners of pagan magic. The irony that their salvation lie in sinners turned saints, heretics turned witch hunters? Well, if I wasn't interested before, I'm damn sure aroused by now. It's looking like a serious take on Army of Darkness, so count me in.
Groovy.
I don't know. I'm getting Moons of Madness vibes from Fort Solis, and that's not a good thing. It was a world premiere and a brief trailer, but this didn't drive any kind of intrigue or make much of an impression with me. The comeback kid is back from the dead. I remember when I was watching this trailer, I was saying to myself, hey, this game with retro tech reminds me of that game that got cancelled. And lo and behold, it is that game, and it didn't get cancelled. As much as I'm not a huge fan of the tech aesthetic of Ridley Scott's Alien, it is this look and feel that gave that film its unique identity, and, if I'm being honest, that style of throwback futurism is partly what distinguishes my interest in this game. Routine versus the aforementioned Fort Solis. Had it not been for Witchfire, this would have been the top game from Summer Game Fest for me. Oh, Marvel's Midnight Suns. I like you, but I'm not in like with you. I want to be excited over the premise of X-Men siding with the Avengers. Superheroes meets the supernatural. Legends versus Lilith, but it's Marvel. The additions of the Hulk and Venom on the side of supernatural evil against Blade and Wolverine, Ghost Rider, and Doctor Strange does sound fire. I know it's getting developed by the people behind XCOM, but setting any expectation high would feel like setting myself up for disappointment. Something tells me we're looking at a Marvel failure in a third medium of entertainment now that their movies are on the decline and their streaming shows never took off. Well, I hope you're ready for more trippy, whacked out, cracked out gameplay from this acid trip within a 30s era cartoon. I mean, just check out the fever dream on display that's going on with this gameplay of Cuphead the Delicious Last Course. Interesting. Usually the snowflakes are the ones crowing about representation, but now you're free to blast them in the face here. It's the only way they'll learn. That's what I call progress. The Delicious Last Course DLC is available now. Here's a dark fantasy title revealed at last year's Game Awards. Speaking of, this Nightingale trailer didn't do much to further my interest level from its original premiere. In fact, if I'm being honest, the initial reveal was much better. Don't get me wrong, I'm still sold on the game, they just didn't deepen the story much in 6 months. Regardless, I am still drawn in and bought in on the idea of traveling to different realms to experience new challenges. The best part is that we have a chance to get to see this premise done correctly. The Victorian-era garb and weaponry has earned this game the moniker of Steampunk Stargate. So with that label being stated, please don't suck.
Oi, we got bare English accents delivered by Jason Statham's speech therapist as we battle undead monsters. Crikey, watch your six and stay together. Bollocks, Coy blimey, skip to me loo, Warhammer 4K Darktide. Time to give 'em trollops a wallop, we wills.
That's all I got to say. Shout out to this indie engine that could, rounding out its franchise into a trilogy. Layers of Fears, or Layer of Fear 3, as you might have guessed, definitely gets points for visual flair. As you can tell from the trailer's imagery, Bloober Team is angling for psychedelic horror over jump scares and gore. The story will unravel across many generations, not just one character. As for the interesting plural in the game's title, the developer CEO teased that they had worked out a new approach, something that is maybe not yet obvious, but there's a reason why we called it Layers of Fears. I guess we'll have to stay tuned. On a personal note, I'm happy to see this indie game get a follow-up in Daymare 1994 Sandcastle. I know the reception to the first was that there were areas that were left to be desired. Here's hoping that those teething issues have since been addressed and resolved. I do like the incorporation of stun grenades to freeze opponents in place. It's up to us in this game to scour the laboratories and fend off waves of undead experimentations inspired by Resident Evil 2 and the horrors of yesteryear. The Last of Us Part 1 Remake coming to PS5. Who cares about this cash grab? I really have to give it up to the Scorn developers. A chill ran down my spine listening to the narration of this trailer by none other than Doug Bradley. While the art style of the game is clearly akin to the nightmarish visions of H.R. Giger's designs for Ridley Scott's Alien, if the game is going for body horror, it was no less a treat to have Pinhead himself provide voiceover commentary to present this game. The biomechanical melding of man and machine is appropriately referred to as a hellscape. We learned that, with no spoken dialogue, the game's story will unravel through its infernal environment. Releasing October 2022, this Halloween treat is one I'm eager to unwrap. We have another PT-inspired title that is suitably trippy. Once my eyes caught the storybook in the trailer, it reminded me of the Babadook, so hopefully this game won't be overrated. The use of the music is suitably unsettling, which I'm sure will bleed over into the gameplay. I guess we'll have to wait and see on the Scream stream since I've selected this title to play all September long on the Mind Games. Stay tuned. What can be said about Metal Hellsinger other than, with the addition of dual-wield pistols and melee weapons, this Doom clone's got my Jolly Roger at full mast, if you catch my drift. Apparently, the more you mow down fiends, the more intense the music gets, which, to me, is a feature that truly sounds next-gen to enhance player immersion. We're just over a week away from release, so here's hoping whatever polish the game has didn't wash away too much of the blood spilled. Either way, this game looks like one hell of a good time. From early on, Choo Choo Charlie trailers, we were given hints of upgrading your train's weapons and defenses to help in evading, attacking, and defending against this evil spider train. But now we're being told you have to loot your abandoned environments and complete fetch quests from NPCs in order to acquire these updates. However, you'll have to journey your surroundings on foot in order to attain these sought-after upgrades. Well, if a monster locomotive with arachnid legs, a fang-filled rictus and deadened eyes weren't fear-inspiring enough, we've got shotgun-toting cultists that worship this abomination looking to feed you to it. So, if you can't be the life of the party, you can settle for the hors d'oeuvres. This game will be playable on PC and await you in your nightmares when you sleep tonight. Okay, one GameCom down, 4 to go. Announced at Sony's State of Play, I will reserve judgment on the Resident Evil 4 remake for when more details are revealed, in spite of all the recent leaks. At this juncture, all I can say is at long last, Capcom is getting their wet dream remake to what they so heavily believe is their franchise crown jewel that they've oriented 3 separate sequels to emulate, including their most recent RE Village. Deal with it, fanboys. I don't want to turn this into a rant about the series, but the fact that we've gotten 4 mainline games in 5 years should tell you all you need to know about the business philosophy from this parent studio and franchise valuing quantity over quality. In short, buyer beware. Here's hoping their gamble pays off because, in case you haven't been paying attention, they've staked half their damn franchise on the action formula trying to capture lightning in a bottle for nearly 2 decades. So, if they can hedge their bet, they won't just buy the farm, but risk taking down what is already an ailing franchise down with them. Admittedly, I wasn't very excited about Redfall when I first caught the first trailer. I'm like, is this just another Vampire the Masquerade game? However, with the recent reveal that expanded on the backstory, it did just the trick to grab my attention. The enemy types, weapon variety, and the city under siege not only turned a corner for me in terms of appeal, but I think that this title has the potential to reach a top anticipated spot for gamers and serve to drive interest in the Series X. It definitely earned my most anticipated for this nested GameCom. We now come to A Plague Tale Requiem. I'm happy that not only has someone made a story in any medium of this often overlooked dark age horror in human history, but that the original game has gotten a sequel. Between the sickness, the desperation and dangers present in one's fellow man during the plague, and, of course, the rats, I'm interested in exploring this world and curious to see how they present this unique facet of horror. It's always a welcome sight when we get a Lovecraft game that doesn't get bogged down with forcibly focusing on the author's problematic overtones, and one that doesn't suck. What immediately draws me in about the last case of Benedict Fox is the side-scrolling and the impressive art style. The environments and twisted settings we're in for with this one makes this indie platformer one to watch out for. Speaking of, here's one I'm looking forward to. While what was showcased was largely cinematic in nature, the plot points revealed for Stalker 2 clue you into the scenario we're soon to enter. A background conversation between, no doubt, government agents hears the tough questions getting asked to gauge the strength of a perimeter for a familiar zone. The good doctor in charge assures his inquirer of the stability of Chernobyl's city limits against any possible emissions. The travel by trucker into that very zone reveals the severity of those emissions that the doctor was so easily dismissing, as well as the instability of reality itself within the zone. I'm going to guess that with the lack of gameplay footage a year later, that the devs are playing the further reveals of this game close to the chest. So I think I can speak for everyone when I say I'm down for what they've got in store. There isn't much to tell about the cinematic trailer for Diablo IV. You've got a necromancer and, hey, werewolves. There's werewolves. That's something. Referred to as Thief with Guns, to the point that they registered the URL as such, the retro animation of Gloomwood is a welcome reminder of gaming's past, while the fast-paced shooting mechanics is a testament of present gameplay. Playing as a doctor in a brooding Victorian metropolis seized within the grip of a curse, you'll encounter a city full of denizens that are a bit too gung-ho for your head, as well as creatures out for your blood. The level design is anything but linear, littered with divergent pathways and even secret passages. True to its lineage, the stealth mechanics will make use of both light and sound. Speaking of throwback art styles, we go from retro to pixel art, from London streets to horrors amongst the stars. In Signalis, you'll play as an android awakened aboard a space station to find it swarming with monsters. Your POV is a top-down perspective, and level design is RE inspired, as you'll have plenty of old-school puzzle solving to contend with. Releasing October 27th, 2022. Yet another space horror on the horizon, RIPOUT looks like the movie that Virus should have been. John Carpenter's The Thing meets James Cameron's The Terminator. No wonder then that it ranks at my top spot for Steam's Next Fest. This game is just hellish enough to not be a Doom clone, but rather carve out its own look and feel. Danger and style. This co-op shooter sees you and two other unfortunate souls shoot your way through procedurally generated ships full of biomechanical terrors that use the human body as a Rubik's Cube, with the way they are constantly reconfiguring themselves. This isn't the end of the body horror, as your own gun is a living weapon used to scavenge usable alien components to integrate into your personal armory. Well, to add to the collection of unique art styles already mentioned, we have The Fridge is Red, which looks akin to VHS quality imagery, almost FMV-like. And the intrigue doesn't end there, because this game will adopt the anthology format. Just to give you a peek for what this game's aiming for, one plotline will see you searching a room for letter-shaped magnets where straying your gaze away from a fridge will allow it to shuffle ever closer to you each time. Peekaboo. Another sees players traverse the corridors of a seemingly haunted building. Call me crazy, but the oddball premise and unorthodox anthology format makes this a unique title deserving of some limelight. Hope you're not sick of pixel art yet, because if you are, you can get your ass blown away just like the cultists in this game, Cultic. Taking cues from 3D Realm's other classic shooter, Blood, this game starts you out rising from your own grave. I'll give you three guesses over who you've got your sights set on to seek revenge against, but you'll only need one. The evil monks might be wielding hatchets, but you're armed to the teeth with dynamite and boomsticks. The combat isn't the only frenetic component, as you'll be getting plenty of exercise evading your foes to ensure you don't just die all over again. If you're a crafty player, you'll even manage to get certain cultists to turn on each other. Well, Cuphead can't be the only kids' cartoon on the block. In this roguelike Cult of the Lamb, I give the devs credit. It's a pretty interesting premise to spare a sacrificial lamb just to have it serve as a shepherd for its own worshipping sect. That's not the only combination of unlike ingredients on tap. There's base building mechanics at play with raids against other tribes while quelling internal uprisings, and of course, the obvious cute yet creepy premise. Now available. We continue this crime wave against childhood with this game. My Friendly Neighborhood takes obvious inspiration from Sesame Street and looks like the type of nightmare factory that Five Nights at Freddy's should have been. Trapped within the set of a puppet show, you're chased by homicidal sock mannequins bent on your demise. What I like about the game is that because it doesn't rely on gore of any kind, the developers are forced to find other avenues of inducing fear, which means upping the creep factor and reliance on mood. Puzzle mechanics and door loading scenes add to the classic feel of old-school gaming. This twist on whimsical kids shows is a welcome addition. I'm surprised and disappointed that my interest in Atomic Heart has waned in the last few years. Whereas I was initially enthusiastic about this Soviet alternative history premise where the industrial automation leads to a hostile takeover by machines and bioengineering experiments, as of this video's recording, now, it just feels like Russian Bioshock. I'm at least still hopeful the devs can pull a rabbit out of their Yushchenko with this one. As a general rule of thumb, I don't mind if there are multiple games with a similar premise, with the caveat that they put in sincere effort to stand apart. With Stalker 2 on the way, I'm skeptical if this game will do enough to stake its own claim against the competition. We have here what, for me, wasn't just a game of the show, but the top announcement for all shows this summer. In what I believed was a dead brand, it appears this shot in the dark was precisely what the genre ordered. The hallowed forefather of survival horror, Alone in the Dark, has returned. Said to combine elements from all three original games, when you step foot back into Dorseto Manor to solve a mystery, you'll do so wearing the shoes of either classic characters Edward Carnby or Emily Hartwood. These aren't the only throwbacks to traditional survival horror conventions as, despite the usage of weapons, there is less gunplay throughout the game, with a focus on conserving ammo and desperate combat. Considering how far gaming has come in the last 20-30 years since the original's release, the Lovecraft elements will be dialed up considerably. I've gushed over this game and its announcement in a previous video, so I'll end this portion saying I naturally hope this game delivers and that it opens the door for revivals of Parasite Eve and Dino Crisis alike. Fingers crossed. When it comes to the glut of zombie media that we've endured for over 2 decades, I'm at the point that anything involving cannibal corpses relies heavily on what makes it stand out from the undead horde of other brain-dead options. Dead Island 2 doesn't. It's a CGI teaser, so no gameplay, and I doubt it would have made much of a difference regardless. The only thing that can be said about this one is it seems to have traded the serious tone of the original for a more comedic, upbeat feel. Survival horror at its finest, everybody. I'll shoot straight from the hip with you guys. I've never been a fan of this franchise, literally any of the games. The Outlast Trials doesn't appear to be changing my mind anytime soon. More of the same, but this time within an asylum. Groundbreaking stuff. It does precious little to change my mind. Speaking of unoriginality, this latest entry just looks like it's borrowed from the Saw movies, another series that has long lost its way. Avoid psychos, escape a prison, next. Be Still My Throbbing Boner. As much as I'm left to wonder, why has this taken so long to release? The fact is, the timing couldn't be better. With the killer Klowns from Outer Space license securing everything from merchandise announcements to haunted house venues, if we can't get a sequel or reboot, a video game is the next best thing and, in fact, may lead to a live-action adaptation down the road. Assuming the flavor of the month, asymmetrical multiplayer format, you can play as either human or alien jesters. Character selection is divided into class, the city is loaded with loot and weapons, and you're able to unlock abilities by leveling up. With the Pennywise documentary releasing on streaming, Terrifier 2's recent debut to eventually land on digital, and this Killer Klowns comeback this summer belonged to evil clowns. The 80s reigned supreme, so step right up. I'm glad our old friend finally opted to chime in. It had been so long since we had heard anything from Lies of P, I had all but forgotten about it. So, it's looking like we have a number of fellow puppets to contend with, but they're mechanized as well. Hey, I am totally down for some steampunk with my horror. The hack and slash combat reminds me of Devil May Cry, and the dour British industrial era setting can make for some stylish environments. I'm interested to see how they jigger with this classic story and if there's a puppet master pulling the strings from behind the scenes. The stage is set. Well, gamers and horror fans, that does it for this mammoth recounting of all horror games announced during the summer. We've got some solid interactive experiences on the way. IPs resurfaced from the dead like Routine, Stalker 2, Alone in the Dark, Killer Klowns from Outer Space. Games are getting a lot of mileage out of the Victorian era settings such as Nightingale, Gloomwood, and Lies of P. Popular franchises are seeing continuance, the likes of Layers of Fear, Daymare 1994, A Plague Tale Requiem. Indies definitely ain't slouching, not with games like Choo Choo Charles, The Fridge is Dead, and Cultic on the way. There's plenty to look forward to from space horror with titles such as RIPOUT and Warhammer 40k Darktide. Dark Fantasy had a remarkable showing for itself through Witchfire, Diablo IV, and The Last Case of Benedict Fox. In the coming and remaining months of the year, we've got Metal Hellsinger, Scorn, and Signalis to look forward to, which perfectly segues into the following. To counterbalance my introspection of scary movies, I host webcasts of my playthrough of survival horror games in what I affectionately call the Scream Stream. Going live every Tuesday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard, 5:30 p.m. on the West Coast. You're more than welcome to join, links are in the description. As you can tell from this exhaustive list of upcoming games I've compiled, I'll have my work cut out for me, and yet, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. So, I hope you've enjoyed this coverage, and I hope to hear from you soon because you'll be seeing plenty of me. I've been Incarnate reminding you, I ain't just a big deal, I'm the real deal. If you're resigned to your fate, time to subscribe to your fears.
Come play with